Welcome back to System Software. So last time we looked at advanced usages of processes on the command line, namely piping and other tricks we can do with multiplexers. So today we're going to look at go over the editor, which is a critical part of the development environment because it allows you to actually modify text. And as we'll see today, we can use editors for other things like building software, using version control. But before we get into today's lecture, I'd like to go over the first programming project. So I've released the instructions for the first programming project, which is just writing a Hello World program. It's here on the schedule. But there's a few wrinkles to it. So rather than just writing a classic Hello World, I'm asking you to go into Eustace, use one of the two text editors that you picked for homework today, and either Emacs or Vim, and write the Hello World program entirely through the command line with that text editor. So this will help you practice using your text editor, and I'll expect you to use the command line for the entirety of your project development in this course. So here are the instructions for entering Eustace and creating the Hello World program in your editor. One additional wrinkle that I'd like you to do is to record yourself using either Vim or Emacs in Eustace. And there's a utility that is standard in Unix installations called script. And script will actually record your terminal session so that we can play it back. So let me show you what this looks like, recording this. And this is something that you'll submit with your project once it's due in a couple of weeks. So it's not due until 9/17, so there's almost 2 weeks or more to submit this project. And we'll go over the several pieces of the Hello World project over the next couple of classes. But the first step is to write the Hello World program itself. So writing itself, I expect that everyone should be able to do, and probably has before many times. But here you'll record yourself doing it in Emacs or Vim. So let me walk through what this looks like. So I've already SSH'd into Eustace. And so you'll let me move my old Hello World directory out of the way here. Oh, I don't have Hello World yet, so I'll make my Hello World application, or have my Hello World folder, and enter the folder, pwd print working directory to see where I am, ls to see what's here. There's no non-hidden files here. So here's how you use the script command. Script space -T space hello.timing. So this is a file that will record all the timings between keystrokes, space hello.script. And this will record the text of your terminal session. So hit enter. It'll tell you that it's starting to record and what files that it's storing to. And so you just get the same bash prompt. So you'll start editing your program here. I'll use Emacs to create this Hello World program. And then just type out the standard Hello World program. You can leave the arguments empty. We'll just do printf Hello World. And that's all you need to do. So in Emacs, we'll go over editors today, but in Emacs you do Control-X, Control-S to save your file, Control-X, Control-C to exit. And that's it. To stop recording, you just exit the bash session. And so what script did is it created a new bash session. So when you exit that bash session, you're back into your original session that you SSH'd into. And you can double check that everything has been recorded correctly using this command here by using the script replay command. And so I'll give it the timing file and the log file. And the number at the end is just a multiplier for time. So I can replay this session 3 times faster, or 2 times faster, or 4 times faster. So I'll replay this back 3 times faster, and you'll see as soon as I hit enter, I won't be typing anything. Instead, the terminal will be replaying, the script replay command will be replaying all of the commands and keystrokes that I've entered on the screen and all of their results from Bash. So let me hit enter. So it looks like nothing's happening. And now here is what I typed. It's 3 times faster than I typed it, but there it is. And so there's the exit command, there's the end. And yeah, so that's that's what you'll produce and submit once you submit the final project. We will go over how to submit it in 2 lectures. So you'll have to submit it via Git, but we'll go over that in the version control lecture. So that's the first thing that you'll do. So hopefully by today, by the time you watch this, you'll have learned, at least gone through the tutorial of one of the editors, Emacs or Vim, and be able to complete a pretty straightforward Hello World program. So I designed this to be a very, very simple programming exercise to give you the opportunity to get comfortable with command line editing and command line in general. Over the next week or so, we will go over how to create a makefile and also how to use version control. But we'll leave that for the next couple of lectures. Okay, so that's the beginning of the Hello World project. This is the first project that you'll submit. Remember, everything will be submitted on Git, and we will go over how to submit things on Git next week. So that's the Hello World program. If you have any questions, please feel free to come to office hours or go on EdStem to ask questions. But that's your task, first task for the Hello World program. For today's homework due next time, it's largely reading. So homework 6 it's up on the website here under our lecture for today. And for homework 6, you'll just read the first couple of chapters of 21st Century C. So you can follow this link to find a link to the digital book. Remember, you don't have to buy this book. This book is provided free of charge to UCF students from the UCF library. And remember to reread these instructions on how to access this book. Importantly, do not click read online. Instead, download chapters individually. So download the chapters below. Let me show what that looks like. So when I go to this link here, you have to be logged in the UCF VPN or logged in via UCF somehow, and you should see this page. So do not click read online. Instead, scroll down and you'll see all of the chapters available and a download PDF link. Click on that link to get access to a PDF version of that section of the book. You should be able to download the entire, all the first 5 chapters in the preface in one day. You should have enough pages remaining for that one day. If you make a mistake or download something else, you can just wait till the next day to download the rest of it. But for today's reading for homework 6, you'll only need the preface, chapter 1, and chapter 2. It's about 60 pages, give or take. I've made most of the preface optional. Just read the first couple pages of the preface. And it's about 60 pages, so it may take a little more than an hour, but hopefully it's an easier hour and easier read. And then in web courses, just write one thing you learned about C programming from this book, because a book takes a kind of a unique approach to C development, a modern approach. But mainly I want you to get the content of the book for the homework. Okay, so that's the project, the Hello World project, and the homework for next time. And as I said, the Hello World project is not due for 12 days from this lecture, not due till the 17th. And we'll go over the rest of the tools you need in order to finish and test this project. Or finish and submit this project, I should say. Okay, so let's get started in our editor, learning about our editor, one of the key parts of our programming environment. So the first thing I'd like to go over is a development workflow that should make it a little easier to use the command line We talked about terminal multiplexers last time when we went into advanced uses of processes. And if you recall, a multiplexer is a tool that will let you create multiple bash windows or terminal windows, so to speak. Now, they're not windows like a graphical user interface windows, but here I've typed Byobu to enter a Byobu session, and I can use, so this is my first Byobu window. I can use F2 to create another window. And each of these bash sessions is running simultaneously, and you can switch between them using F3 and F4 or Alt left and right arrow keys. So you can use this development workflow is convenient because I can keep an editor open while also keeping a terminal window open for compiling to testing, using Git, using other tools at the same time. So for instance, if I had a bug here, I can easily switch back and forth using Alt left and right or F3 and F4, switch back and forth between my editor and my compiler. And using the bash history, I can just hit the up arrow to repeat the compile command until I get this program to compile and I think it's correct, and then I can start running and testing it. You could even keep a third window open for running and keeping tests open. You can have another window open for writing and developing tests, if you want to keep that separate, although Emacs, as I'll show you later, does help you, does allow you to have multiple files open. Okay, so that's the multiplexer-based development workflow that I encourage you to use. It'll help make you a little faster when working with projects, especially since you often need to switch back and forth between compiling, running, testing, and editing, and you can actually keep separate windows for each of these or several of those tasks at the same time. All right, so the first editor I'm going to show you is Emacs, and this is one of the two editors that I am requiring for projects in this course. Emacs is the editor I use the most for development, for note-taking, for web page creation even. And Emacs is a little bit more than a text editor. It's not just for editing text. It has lots of has a design philosophy that allows it to be more than a text editor. According to its manual, it's designed to be self-documenting, so you can actually access its help manual. Its help manual is built in. You can ask for the definition of certain key commands. You can ask for how to use certain functions. It's designed to be customizable. So it comes with a set of key bindings, but you can change these. You can modify these. You can make your own key bindings. It's also extensible. So it has a language, Emacs Lisp, that you can actually write new packages and really fully featured applications within the Emacs editor. So it doesn't exactly fit the Unix philosophy of one tool that does one small thing, but understandably, this is a programming environment tool. This is a programming tool, and it can do lots of other stuff that can support programming and other types of text editing work. So as I mentioned, it's more than a text editor. You can actually invoke processes from it. You could run make, you could run a terminal shell, you can run other programs from Emacs. I've heard people call Emacs something like an operating system on its own, which is a bit of an exaggeration, but you can absolutely invoke other processes from it. You can do email, IRC. There are packages for doing all these communication tools within the Emacs editor. One thing that I use all the time is Git integration. My projects, I use Git, the version control that we're going to learn next week. And there's integration in Git to make it easier to commit and inspect differences in your files, write commit messages, and update the software to its remote repository. And of course, you can manage files. You can manage directories. You can move things. You can change their permissions. There's also a form of windowing in Emacs, which, like Byobu, is not windowing in the graphical sense, although Emacs does have a graphical version. You can open multiple frames of or open multiple tiles of files at the same time. And there's this really useful package called org mode, which I'll show a little bit later. It's basically outlining and note-taking, and I actually use this to create the class's website. Just to illustrate how much more you can do with Emacs, the fact that it's so extensible, you can actually run, somebody wrote a Tetris port for Emacs, so here's my Emacs window on the right here. If I type load the Emacs command, or the Tetris command, I'll get a built-in Tetris game, just to show that you can write fully featured programs within the Emacs editor environment. Okay, so I've opened the tutorial here on the right, and I'm just going to go through quickly. Hopefully you went over the tutorial if you chose Emacs, and even if not, it's useful to know some of the Emacs commands, because in Bash, a lot of the commands in Bash are similar to the Emacs commands, at least the default key bindings. So with Emacs, if you get stuck in Emacs in Eustace and you don't know how to escape, use Control-X followed by Control-C. This will exit Emacs. So here I am in the Eustace version of Emacs. Control-X, Control-C will exit. You can remember that Control-C kills processes in Bash. So Control-X, Control-C will exit your editor. So just so you can see what commands I'm running, I've turned on a mode that will show all of the commands that I'm running inside of Emacs. So let's take a look at this tutorial a little bit. So there are two modifier keys that are used when running Emacs key bindings. So one is Control. So that's the Control key, CTRL on your keyboard. One is called Meta in the Emacs world, but for most PC users or PC keyboard users, this is the Alt key. And at least on my keyboard, you can use either side, left and right. For ergonomic purposes, I strongly recommend have one hand hold the modifier key and the other hand hold the keyboard key. So for Control F, for instance, use your right hand for Control, your left hand for F. Doing it with the same hand can get quite fatiguing very quickly. Alternatively, you can use Escape instead of Meta. So you can say Escape F. So I've used MF versus Escape F, and they're both Meta F. So this tutorial goes over some useful commands here for cursor movement. To get started, one reason that makes Emacs, one reason to start with Emacs is that you can use the kind of conventional arrow keys, page up and page down keys, home and end. So you can see on the right here which keys I'm pressing. Those will work in Emacs as well. They should work even through your terminal. When you're in the terminal, you won't be able to use the mouse, so resist the temptation to try to use the mouse, although the windowing version of Emacs will let you use the mouse, but we'll be using the Eustace terminal version of Emacs, where mouse will not help you do anything. You won't be able to move the cursor with the mouse here. So I've kind of summarized some of the commands you'll need to use Emacs. They highlight here in the tutorial the kind of Emacs way of moving the cursor. And they all work by holding down Control. And you can kind of remember these with a mnemonic that B is for back, F is for forward, P is for previous line, N is for next line. So you can see here on the right which keys I'm pressing in order to move the cursor. And just like Control-L will clear the screen in Bash, Control-L here will center the screen. So the first time you hit Control-L, it'll center the screen on the cursor. So if I move up here to Basic Cursor Control and hit Control-L, it'll center Basic Cursor Control. If I continue to hit Control-L, it'll rotate between center, top, and bottom of the screen. So they highlight this early. It's a useful command. They also highlight the way to do page up and page down, which is Control-V and Alt V. Control V is page down, Alt V is page up. Other useful commands are home and end. You can use home and end on your keyboard, but the Emacs way is Control A and Control E. So I don't know where they get to it, if they get to it here in the tutorial, but one useful command is to be able to search for text. So I use these all the time in development. So Control S, and you'll see at the bottom of the screen, it'll bring up this prompt for the search keyword. So I can type in bring, and I can just hit Control S to keep finding more instances. Control R will work backwards. We'll search the same thing backwards. And if you want to stop and get out of this, you can just hit Enter to end the search, or you can hit Control G to end the search but stay in the same location that you started the search from. So here's some more sophisticated navigation. If you remember these cursor movement keywords, you can use Alt for them to make them word level for forward and back. And for A and E, if you use Alt A, it'll bring you to the previous sentence. It'll be the beginning of the sentence rather than the beginning of the line. So Control A goes to the beginning of the line, Control E end of the line, Alt A, beginning of the sentence, Alt E, end of the sentence. These commands are also useful, being able to go to the top and bottom of the entire file. So this is Alt left angle bracket and Alt right angle bracket. So on a PC keyboard, this would be Alt Shift left angle bracket, because you need the shift to get to the left angle bracket, and Alt right. So Alt left angle bracket, Alt right angle bracket to go to the top and bottom of the file. So if you don't want to have to leave the editor to open a new file, you can use Control X, Control F, and you'll see you're prompted for the name of a file to open here. Control X, Control S will save a file. Control X, Control W will save a file to a new name. It's like save as. So there's some useful features to Emacs. For instance, I can open, let's go here into use this. If I, instead of opening a file name, so here I could open, say, hello script, and view that hello.script file we created earlier in the lecture. If I instead open a directory, it will bring me into a directory browsing mode where I can graphically, more or less, select different files to open. You can close a file with Control X, Control X K, so that will kill what they call a buffer. So here, if I open up some new file, Control X K will bring up a prompt to kill one of the files, one of the buffers that I have open. If I hit enter, it will kill that file. So you don't need to open Emacs for each new file you'd like to edit. You can use these additional commands to open multiple files at the same time. If you want to view what files you have open, you can use Control X, Control B. Let me show that with the key command. So Control X, Control B will open a window that shows you all of the files that you have open. You can switch between windows with Control X, O. So you don't have to remember all these commands. I just want to give you a kind of highlight some of the useful things that you can do with Emacs. It gives you really this environment, so really kind of like an IDE, command line IDE that you can use to manage lots of files. So at the most basic, if you choose Emacs as your editor, the most basic things you need to know are to use Emacs and then the name of a file to edit. You can use the arrow keys, page up, page down, home and end as normal on the PC, but also use the Control N, Control P, Control F, Control B to move around your file. And then Control X, Control S will save your file. Control X, Control C will exit. So that's really the all you need to get started on the Hello World project. But I'd like to show you a couple of other more extensive, fun usages of Emacs. So for one, you can do so-called window management. Let me show this with the so you can see the commands that I'm entering. So in the tutorial, they show you Control X1, which if you do Control X1, it will kill all other windows you have open. So if you have, for instance, in their case, they ask you to open up the built-in help for a specific command. So Control H, K will let you type in an Emacs command. So for instance, I'll type in Control F. And here it shows you a help document to explain this keyboard shortcut. So if you want to get back to a state where you only have a single window open, you do Control X1. And it will kill all other windows except the current one you have. This won't actually kill the help file, so you can see here it's still open, but it'll just close the presentation of that file. We can, so just like you have Control X1, Control X2 and Control X3 will do other things. Control X2 will open a new window. It'll divide your current window into two, and in this case it's just duplicating the same file, but then we can use Control XB or Control X Control XB or Control X Control B in order to open a different file in a different window. So to go over that again, Control X2 will divide the window into two, and then you can open a new buffer with Control XB. So here it's defaulting to opening editor.org. And now I can view two windows at once, two files at once in two windows. If I keep hitting Control X2, it'll keep subdividing whatever window I have open into two. So Control X1 will bring us back to a single window. And similarly, Control X3 will give us a side-by-side set of windows. So here I've got two windows side by side, and similarly I can keep dividing those if I like. If I don't want to have to go back to a single window, I can use Control X0 to kill one specific window. Control X0 will kill one specific window. I can even combine Control X1, Control X2, Control X2 and Control X3 to divide up the windows however I like. I can divide up each window vertically or horizontally. I can use Control XO to switch between windows, the letter O. And Control X0 will kill whatever window I'm currently in. So Control X0 will kill that left window that I had open. So let me get back to the tutorial and use Control X1 to kill all other windows. So that's window management. So with file management, let me go to uses here to show this. For file management, if I open up a directory, there's several. I can do a lot of the bash operations that I could do in bash. I can do this in Emacs. So capital R will rename a file. Capital C will copy it. And so, for instance, if I copy hello to hello2.c, I can move this file with rename, because remember, rename is does the same thing as move in the Unix world. I can rename this to, say, new hello.c. I can also create directories. So with plus, I can create a new directory. With R, I could move hello into a new directory. And with this directory view, if I hit enter on a folder, it will take me into that folder. it actually creates a new buffer window, so I can always return to the parent directory that way, or I can use the .dot folder to return to the parent. So again, this is more advanced users of Emacs. Just want to show you what's possible. So if you decide to learn Emacs, this is the type of functionality that you can ultimately learn gradually with Emacs. So org mode is probably one of the most powerful parts of Emacs. Org mode is an outlining and note-taking tool that is extremely extensive. You can do you can keep to-do lists, you can make calendars and agendas and reminders, you can attach files, but at its core, it's an outlining tool. So I can make an outline for talking about editors. And so the commands for doing this, there's lots of shortcuts for doing this. So if I do Alt or Meta return, it will just make a new heading for me. There are shortcuts for demoting and promoting headings. So Alt arrow keys will, the right arrow will demote and the left arrow will promote headings. And I can even use tab to close and hide and open headings, including ancestors. So I'm just kind of obsessively saving as I go. So org mode is how I actually generate this course web page. So here's index.org. This is the file that the org mode file that I used to generate this HTML page. So you can actually see it has a table mode. I can create tables in org mode. And each of these sections here is actually a heading in org mode. It'll create a table of contents for me automatically if I so choose. I have the title and everything. So yeah, this org mode has exports where I can export it to various different file formats like PDF for LaTeX, plain text. I think there's a markdown. Yeah, there's a markdown export. And what I use for lecture slides is I also use org mode for that. So here is the introduction slides that I created, and it's really just org mode. It's a set of headings and subheadings with content, and I can export this as an HTML file. So here I've exported org mode as an HTML file, and this is exactly what's used to generate the online notes on the web page. So here, if you go to introduction, this is the HTML file generated from my org mode introduction notes. But what's even more amazing about this is I can use a tool that will export it to a presentation. So this is reveal.js. It's a JavaScript-based library for making HTML-based presentations. And I can use the same org mode file to generate both an HTML file that is for notes, like this, and I can also use it to generate a set of slides, all from the same original org mode file. So this org mode, it's super powerful. I'm always learning all the time how to use this, how to benefit from it. But that's one cool part of using Emacs. And so I already showed the class that I actually use this to generate the entire web page. This entire web page is generated from org mode content. So something that's probably a lot more useful to you as developers is I can do version control and software development in this in Emacs. So we'll look at Git next time, but here's an example of using a tool called Magit, which is Emacs's built-in Git integration. So here I've edited this source file that is part of one of my research projects, and I had to make a small bug fix to it. And you can see in the Magit, it will show me all changes that I've made to the file so far since the last time I committed the file. We'll see more about this when I do Git, but I could make a new branch, like which is used for submitting updates to source code. Oops. I can make a new branch, and I can even stage these changes to be committed and actually commit them. So now I've made an update to my software. I can push it to remote repository. We'll see more about Git in next week, but Vim also has this kind of integration, but it makes development much faster to use this kind of tool. All right, so let's take a look at Vim, the other option for doing projects in this class. Now, I'm much less familiar with the Vim. I don't use it for development, but it is also a very popular choice. It also has some extensibility similar to Emacs, but it's good to know because a lot of other tools use Vim type commands, like the less command. But one of the most sort of unintuitive things about it, especially considering modern editors like Emacs and other editors, is that it has multiple modes. So when you first open up Emacs, so let's say I want to make a fresh version of Hello World, and I open up a new file. If I start typing text or start typing keys, I can't actually start editing the file. I can't start inserting text into the file. And that's because it starts out in normal mode. So normal mode is where you can navigate text, you can edit text, you can save and quit. And so if you ever get stuck in Vim, you can always type :Q or :Q exclamation point to get out of Vim. So one thing to be careful of when you're using Vim. So if you want to use Vim, I strongly recommend going over the Vim tutor. It will walk you through all of these details to make sure you don't get stuck in Vim. So there's so yeah, I've put some hints here for exiting Vim here. Okay, so one of the benefits of having these modes, and one reason that I think Vim is probably still very much lasting, is this separation of modes makes the keyboard shortcuts much more straightforward than something like Emacs. With Emacs, you always have to hold down Alt or Control or several combinations of keys, and that's because in Emacs and other modern editors, when you start typing, you immediately start editing and inserting text into the program. So those keys cannot be used for commands. But in VI, they can be used for commands. And so the Vim way of navigating, instead of using arrow keys, is to use H and L for left and right, and J and K for down and up. And this is not unlike the WASD keys that like first-person shooter games use. It's sort of in that vein where it's a somewhat graphical representation of an arrow pad. A little different. J and K go down and up. But once you get used to this, it is pretty efficient because you don't have to move your hands to do a separate set of arrow keys. You don't need to hold down Control or anything. You can just move around the screen. So there are, just like in Emacs, there are ways to move forward by a word. So W and E will move forward by a word. W moves to the beginning of a word. E moves to the end of a word. And B will go back a word. So in contrast to Emacs, where I have to do this with, say, Alt back, here I can just type B. The commands for doing other kinds of navigation are fairly esoteric for a modern editor, but also very simple and short because of these two modes. So I can go to the beginning of a line with 0, think of that as 0. I can go to the end of a line with money sign, which is the end of string sentinel in like classic string matching theory. GG will go to the beginning of a file. Capital G will go to the end of a file. One convenient shorthand is to type a line number like 43 and capital G, and it'll jump immediately to that line number. Like in Emacs, I can search. So this was, somebody asked about how I searched in the less command in class, in an earlier class, and it's the same as in Vim. If I do / and type a string and hit enter, it will match, jump the cursor to that match, and I can use lowercase n to cycle through all of the matches and uppercase n to go backwards through the matches. So in this normal mode, you can also delete characters and cut and paste. So the Vim way of doing this, X will delete a character in front of you, capital X will delete a character behind you. You can combine D for delete with these word movement keys. So DW will delete a word, DE will delete a word till its end, instead of capturing the space. DB will delete a word behind you. Any content that I deleted can be pasted with P, and you can undo with U. DD will delete an entire line. So I don't use Vim very often, but it's useful to know some of these. Also, one of the arguments is that VI or Vim comes pretty standard on Unix distributions, where Emacs usually someone has to install it. Okay, so that's only in normal mode. How do you actually enter text? So let's go to our Hello World program and start actually entering text. The way to enter, there are several ways to enter insertion mode. I is how you start inserting text on the current cursor. So here, I'll just type in my Hello World program. So now that I'm in insert mode, and it actually tells me at the bottom, helpfully, that I'm in insert mode. And with Vim, Vim means Vim improved. You can actually still use arrow keys to move around in insert mode. I don't know if that was possible historically in VI, but the improved version of VI is a little bit more convenient in this respect. So if I, for instance, if I am back in normal mode, so use escape to go back to normal mode, I can't enter text here. But I want to go to start typing at the end of the line here. If I type I, well, it's going to be insert at the cursor, which is before this curly brace. So if I want to start editing text on the end of the line, adding text, I can use capital A for append, and then continue typing out my program. Okay, so now that I'm in insert mode, I can't do any of the commands that I need to do in order to save the file or quit. So to get back into normal mode, hit escape. You can always hit escape a couple of times to get you back into normal mode. There are other modes besides normal and insert mode. To save a file, you can use :W. If I try to quit now without saving the file, it'll warn me. It won't, so you don't lose work. So you can use :W to save the file. If you want to save and quit immediately, you can use :WQ, which will run the W command and the Q command one after another. And voila, I've got my Hello World program. Let's see if it builds. It builds. So that's Vim. I'm not a big Vim user, but go through the tutorial. It's useful to know the commands. I recommend Emacs. I strongly recommend using that, but pick whatever you like. Ideally, pick both. Go through the tutorials for both. They're not super long. It'll take some practice. I would recommend sticking with one for at least a couple of weeks before switching. So use one of these, at least one of these editors, one or the other, when doing all of your class projects. And so just as a reminder for your Hello World project, I'd like you to record yourself using the script command using the editor. So record yourself and use this as I showed you at the beginning of class. And it might be a little bit of a struggle, a little learning curve, but it's just a Hello World program. It's not a hard program. to enter. So take that opportunity to get a little muscle memory in using this editor, and then you'll be well on your way to doing all command line software development. And then once you move on, if you move on to IDEs or want to use GUIs, they'll be that much easier once you're able to do everything on the command line. All right, everyone. Talk to you next time.